to him who thirsts. Through the reading of God's word, may God be glorified, may the church be edified, and as always, may the devil be horrified. Just a few words this morning on co-creators of a new heaven and a new earth. Co-creators of a new heaven and a new earth. The protagonist from the play and subsequent film by the name of Maria, who starred in the great play starring Jr.2. What was the name of that play? Can you remember? The Sound of Music. You'll never forget it now. Maria from The Sound of Music said, let's start from the very beginning. A very good place to start. And I believe that if we are to understand man and woman, we have to start from the very beginning. If we're to understand the nature, the character, the composition, the attributes of man and woman, we have to start from the very beginning when all things existed. Or even prior to that, before things came into existence, we have to somehow find a way to enter upon the stage of life. We know that in the beginning there was only God. There was only God, and we heard that there was this abyss, this chasm, this void that somehow filled the earth, and there was the darkness. I like that, Dr. Robeson, that while God was from the beginning, before there was a beginning, that there was darkness, blackness, help me somebody, that resided in God's presence, and it says that there was a ruah, a pneuma, a wind, a breath that hovered over that abyss. We know that ruah, the Hebrew word for breath, pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A, from Greek for wind or breath, we call it spirit, that it was the spirit that somehow impregnated, if you will, this abyss, this chasm, this womb. Did you ever think of it in that context, that the earth, this chasm, this hole, this black hole, if you will, represents the very womb upon which life comes forth, that the Spirit breathes upon it, and there is life. So that we know that the essence of life is contained not in the physical structure of humanity. It's not in the sinew, skin, and flesh. It's not in the bones and the corpuscles. If you need further biblical evidence, just read Ezekiel chapter 37. Where Ezekiel was led by the Spirit. He said by the Spirit of God. It didn't say that he was just walking around. He said he was led by the Spirit of God, by the very life force of God, to walk up and down that valley of dry bones, and how dry they were. And you know the story. We have preachers here. And if you don't know the story, go to Ezekiel chapter 37 and read it for yourself. We know that there was spirit, that spirit is synonymous with life, that it is in the spirit that we live, move, and have our being. We know that. That in the very beginning there was God, and that this God, this spiritual entity, the total, consummate, completed expression, the penultimate paradigm of the quintessential essence of life, spirit, that this divine energy, this force, this spiritual being, this unseen, intangible being brought all things into existence. That the very essence of life is reposited within this entity that we call God. And that this God, as we say, God all by God's self, God all by himself, that this God did not keep all that was in the Godhead unto itself. But that he decided to form and shape, to create each one of us in its divine image and likeness. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, we read, let us make man in our own image and likeness. I cannot take the these words lightly, Dr. Bennett, because I believe that if God said it, that settles it. Whether I can accept it or not, whether I can parse it, dissect it, unravel it, excavate it, unearth it, it's God said it, that settles it. And I've got to try to bring myself into conformity with God's word. Because that's what it is. It's God's word. From the very beginning, it was God's word. It was God's word that brought things into existence. God thought it, and then God spoke it, and it came to be. God created something out of nothing, it says. Do we not say that, preachers? Do we not get there? Do we not tell our folks that God made something out of nothing? He had to if there was nothing that existed from the beginning. He made something out of nothing. He thought it, and he spoke it, and it came to be. Which says that as a man thinketh, so is he. That you can call things into existence. You can speak things into existence. That you can create something just by the power of the word. God created man and woman in his own image and likeness. And what could that image and likeness be? It had to be of a spiritual entity. First Lady Cheney, you know that it wasn't physical, because God is not a human being. God is not physical. John chapter 4 verse 24 says that God is a spirit. And those who worship him must worship him how? In spirit and in truth. So we know this. We must worship him. That's the problem with our churches today. Doc, folks aren't coming in spirit to worship God. They're worshiping God in the context of their physical being, with their preoccupied with all of their worldly concerns, what they're to eat, what they're to drink, how they're to pay the mortgage, how they're going to get the kids through school, how they're going to pay the car note, the house note. They come heavy laden with all of the phylacteries of this way of life. That's why Jesus had to tell them, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, that moth and rust consume, and robbers break in and steal. People are breaking in and stealing stuff out of our lives each and every day, because we have placed value or stock in the physical, not in the spiritual. But he said, but store for yourself treasures in heaven, that moth and rust and mildew cannot consume, or robbers break in and steal. Or where your treasure is, there's your heart also. There will your heart be also. So the whole notion here is that God creates in his divine image and likeness. He creates man and woman. And whether you look at either one of the two biblical accounts of the story of creation, from the priestly, the first one is taken from the priestly tradition, Genesis chapter 1 all the way to chapter 2 verse 4b, or beyond 4b on through 3, from the Yahwist tradition. The whole notion is that these traditions that were at work in the Old Testament, in the formation of the Pentateuch, the priestly, the Yahwist, the Elohist, and the Deuteronomic traditions, that whatever story of creation you're dealing with, the whole notion is that God creates man and woman in his image and likeness. And what is in God is in us. That what God did was to bring us forth out of the essence of his spiritual DNA. That you and I, do we not realize that we possess God's DNA? We're children of God. That's what 1 John chapter, Dr. Watson, isn't that what it says in 1 John chapter 4, that we are children of God? I'm sorry, 1 John chapter 3 says that we are children of God. That's why we are right now. What we shall be has not yet been revealed. But one thing we know, that when it is revealed, we shall be like him. But we shall see him. That's what it says in the Word. It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible, the basic instructions before leaving earth. It's in there. So the whole concept here is that if we look at man and woman and consider that they possess God's spiritual DNA, just as you and I possess our parents' biochemical formula of DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid, we possess God's spiritual DNA, which is DNA, the divine naturalization of the anatomy. Which means that we possess the essence of God, which is Ruach, pneuma, wind, or breath, spirit, yet at the same time, That wind, breath, or spirit is what makes us live, move,